People first. For the sake of discussion, I created or tried to create several distinctions between a government for business, which is what we have presently, and a government for people. People first. Two of the things that come to mind are highways and public schools. But there's also another thing that comes to mind, and that's television and television advertising, and also radio communications and radio advertising. It's very similar to the way that highways and transportation and employment works, because essentially you pay for the whole thing. You enter into a employment contract, so to speak. You enter into indentured servitude for, let's say, 30 years with an employer that expects you to be there on time. So in order to be there on time, you have to have your own transportation unit, because the United States really is, in this day and age, very bad at public transportation. You have a ridiculous amount of automobiles. All you have to do is just look at some video of Los Angeles to get the idea, or drive through New York City. But the thing of it is with employers and being there on time and having your own automobile and all that, coming up with the money to have your own automobile, and your clothes, and how you look, and how you're going to have meals, probably fast food. You won't have time to cook yourself. You certainly won't have time to cook yourself lunch at lunchtime, maybe not even breakfast, because you got to be there on time. Well, it's not just the automobile. In order to use the automobile effectively, you have to have roads. And your politicians will tell you, well, we build the roads. The state and local governments take care of roads. But the fact of the matter is that you pay for it. So you enter into indentured servitude for an employer. You purchase an automobile in order to get there. You pay for the road to drive the automobile on. And then the money that you get for serving your employer, you take to another business and trade it in for your subsistence, groceries, clothes, shelter, utilities, heating, whatever. Well, how do you know where to buy these things? You turn the television on, or you open a newspaper, or you turn the radio on, and everybody's on there telling you to buy something. It's like the Rolling Stones song, "Get Off of My Cloud." And the crazy thing about it is that you are paying for those advertisements, because these companies that purchase advertising time on television stations, radio stations, and so on, write it off as a tax credit. So in effect, you are paying for it, because somebody has to come up with that revenue that they are not paying. I am advocating the abolition of any tax credit whatsoever for any or all advertising. If you're a company and you're survival of the fittest and all of that business, and you have to have advertising in order to sell whatever it is that you sell, then you're going to have to come up with some way of paying for it. Just like all of us have to come up with some way of paying for our necessities in life. Now, maybe you could have some sort of similar depreciate, or I don't even know what you call it. You get a certain amount of tax deduction or something when you fill out your tax form. Maybe companies could have that in lieu of having a tax credit for advertising. I don't know. But I don't see any reason why we should have to pay for that. The other aspect I was thinking about in this regard was education. You turn the television on nowadays and you hear all about, the reason that business is doing bad, the reason that this holy, sacred thing that is the greatest thing that the universe has ever known, business, the reason they're doing so bad, it's not their fault. In other words, they might as well be sovereign. They could do no wrong. It's your fault. You don't work hard enough. You're not being productive enough. And you're too goddamn stupid. You got to go out and get educated, boy. You just don't know how to do the job correctly. It's never their fault. It's your fault. Well, when I was thinking about this, I had an art instructor in high school. This guy was one of my favorite instructors, and I learned so much from him, not just about art mediums and things like that, but about living and about life. And one of the things that I miss now is that I don't have a place where I could go to check out different art mediums. I can't go to a place and test paint to see, which paint do I like, which oil paint do I like, which pastel do I like, what kind of watercolors or papers do I like. I don't have that anymore. But I wish that somebody had told me the truth when I was in school, when I was in high school. If somebody just said, look at Tommy, when you leave here, you're going to enter into this cold-blooded, cruel, ruthless, dog-eat-dog world, and you're never going to have time to enjoy any of those things that you have now, So take the time and try to enjoy this. But then at the same time, even if somebody told me that, at the same time, here's these other guys saying you have to be productive. You're not working hard enough. You have to learn more and more and more. There's no limit to the capacity of the human mind, and where can I go now to do these things? You can't, because what is more important? Someone has made the decision that it's more important that people have some sort of technical skills. The hell with the art. You don't have time to draw pictures. You don't have time to sketch, boy. You got to learn education. You got to go to the employer and do the right thing. So an important aspect of this government for the people first, is, especially in terms of education, is just to tell the truth. Tell these young kids that before you have to go out and enter into indentured servitude, enjoy these things that you have. Enjoy these things that everybody has to pay for. Like, I have no children. I have to pay for other people's children's education, even though I have no children. So at least I should have some say in that, since I'm paying for it. And I think that if you examine all of these different aspects that people are complaining about, the people that occupy Wall Street and so on and so forth, is that a large part of it is that these people are paying taxes, but other people are making decisions for them. they're not giving them the full story, the full picture. And they're working them so hard and for such long hours that people just don't have time to sit down and think about these things. The only other thing I could think about is now I understand that the various labor unions are entering into the protests, and that's fine. You know, but the thing that you have to remember is that the problem is the arrangement. So no matter how much you get paid, the arrangement's going to be the same. No matter what kind of benefits that you get, the arrangement's going to be the same. So you have to think about that when the labor unions are injecting themselves into this sort of protest, because in effect, the labor unions, don't get them confused with communists or anything like that, because they're not. They're full, true blue American capitalists. Don't let them kid you. The thing you have to remember is that whatever they want as far as wages go and as far as benefits go and everything, is that they're essentially saying we're satisfied with the status quo. We want it to work. We just want to get paid more. We just want more money. You know, I have a blog on Tumblr, and you have to sort through the pictures on there, but there are blog entries that deal with aspects of money and banking and things like that, because that's the other thing that I see that's going wrong here, is that people are adopting this populist, the Federal Reserve Board, it's a merchant leech Jew conspiracy. You know, it's getting very close to what the Nazis were. What the Nazis were arguing about, you know, is the Jews, the banking, the Jews in banking, and so on and so forth. That's a bad way to go, because no matter what kind of system of government you have, you're always going to have money, and you're going to have banks, and you're going to have people that make independent decisions in those regards. You could have Congress, like under our Constitution, to set the value of a monetary unit and to fix it in value. You could do things like that, okay? But as far as actual banking decisions go, you can't do that with the government. It's something that's not akin to government. You know, what you have to do is you have to keep the idea of a government for people separate from the aspect of government, banking, that has to do with business, because business is still something that's always going to have to exist. There's going to be things that the government is just not going to be able to do. There's things that the private sector can't do, but there's also things that the government can't do. So you're still going to have an economy that does things business-wise, like it's done now. The only difference is you should not have that be first. You should have a government that does things for people first, rather than for business. And in order to understand that, you have to look back to see how that came about. And where it really came about is when J.P. Morgan bailed out the federal government. That was like the 1890s or something like that. The reason that the government did not originally do these various things that the conservatives claim are socialism, communism, godlessness, Satanism, or whatever, is because they simply didn't have the resources in order to do it. And one of the great things that people overlook about the Roosevelt years was that whatever you want to call that, the New Deal or whatever, what came of that was the ability of government to raise an enormous amount of revenue. It was the greatest amount of revenue probably that any government has ever raised. And you don't want to throw that away. You don't want to get rid of that, which is what the conservatives want. They want to get rid of that aspect of it so that the money supply is limited and then it goes completely and totally to the purposes of business.